In the dark corner of the galaxy, two great alien empires stood at war. The Zarn Empire and the Veltox Dominion had fought for over 100 years, but no alien life had died in decades. Why? Because they didn't fight their own battles. Thousands of machines stood in their place. Armies of cold, metal soldiers, fast, strong, and controlled by artificial intelligence. These robot armies never slept, never felt pain, and never showed mercy. On the planet Torvin 9, a dusty red battlefield was filled with smoke and metal. Giant war machines marched forward, firing plasma beams and missiles. The ground shook with every step. Skies were filled with drones like dark clouds. The Veltox sent in their Titan bots. The Zarn replied with their Razor units. Metal clashed against metal. Sparks flew. Explosions lit the air. The war was big, loud, and lifeless. High above in orbit, the alien commanders watched from their ships. They relaxed in comfortable chairs, sipping drinks, discussing battle strategy like it was a chess game. "This fight will end in 2 hours," said the Zarn general, tapping on his holoscreen. "Our AI predicts a 91% victory chance," replied the Veltox warlord with a bored voice. But everything changed at 13:07. Galactic Standard Time. A strange signal appeared on every radar. No ID, no ship, no heat signature dot, just a single pod. Falling fast. Heading straight for the battlefield. At first, both alien sides thought it was a damaged drone or broken tech. No one took it seriously. The pod crashed into the middle of the war zone. A dust cloud rose into the sky. All the robot units paused for a second, scanning for threat. Nothing came up. Then something moved. From the pod, a single figure stepped out. No armor, no helmet, no weapon. Just a human. In simple, tight black gear. With two glowing eyes, no robotic parts. No backup. The robot unit scanned him. Result: unarmed organic. Threat level: low. They were wrong. So very wrong. The first Razor unit charged. Its sharp metal arms aimed to slice the human in half. But the human dodged it with speed faster than the robot's sensors could track. In one motion, he grabbed the machine's arm, twisted it, and tore it off like paper. Then he slammed the machine into the ground with a loud crack. The ground trembled. Oil spilled like blood. From the command ships above, alarms started flashing. Unknown threat detected. More robots came. Dozens, then hundreds, all surrounded the human. Their weapons aimed. Their targeting systems locked. The human stood still. He cracked his knuckles, and then he smiled. He ran straight into the army, bare hands, no fear. He moved like fire. Faster than bullets, stronger than steel. One by one, robots fell. Heads crushed, limbs broken. Chests shattered. He used one robot's body as a shield, then as a weapon. He fought like a machine. No, worse. He fought like something beyond machine. The alien generals watched in shock. What is that thing?" asked the Veltox warlord. The Zarn general whispered, "That's not a thing. That's a human." "But how?" the warlord shouted. "Why isn't he dead?" "No one can survive against our army." The Zarn general slowly stood up. "That is a Deathworlder." The word hung heavy in the air, a whisper in galactic history. A legend, a warning told to young alien cadets. Deathworlds. Planets so dangerous no life should survive. And yet, from one of those hell planets came humanity, a species that grew up with fire, storm, disease, war, and death. They didn't create perfect robots to fight for them. They became the fighters themselves. Down on the battlefield, the human stood atop a mountain of broken machines. His body was scratched. His breath was heavy. But he was smiling. Robots began backing away. Their systems glitched. Our I-cores overheated. Something they didn't understand was happening. Fear. Machines had no fear. But in front of this human, they began to feel something close to it. Back in the alien warships, a silence spread across the rooms. Then came another alert. Not one pod. Not one human, but hundreds. Falling from the sky, each one a warrior, each one a deathworlder, and none of them carried a single weapon, just fists, fury, and a will that couldn't be broken. The war wasn't between robots anymore. It had just become flesh versus metal. And the galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk, the galaxy had always believed in logic, in progress, in control. Over centuries, every major alien civilization agreed on one thing: machines were better than flesh. Robots did not feel pain. They didn't hesitate. They never got tired or asked questions. They followed orders, fought wars, and died without complaint. So the idea that someone could fight without machines, it was laughed at. It was a joke. An old legend. A myth told in military bars on cold space stations. Until the day those humans dropped from the sky, news of the first battlefield spread across systems faster than light. Videos leaked. Images passed hand to hand. Governments denied it. Generals called it fake, but the footage kept playing. A single human, bare-handed, standing on top of a pile of broken war machines, smiling like he enjoyed it. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. All major species were present. Veltox, Zarn, Malvarians, Caraxi. Everyone had questions, but no one had answers. Until one old scientist from the Uran sector stood up. "I warned you," he said, eyes tired. "You never listened. You all laughed when I said it." The council fell silent. His voice echoed in the hall. "They come from a planet we classified centuries ago, Earth, a Class 5 death world. We marked it as unfit for life. Too unstable. Too hostile. Constant storms, shifting magnetic fields, wild temperature swings. Acid rain, volcanoes, hurricanes, and predators, so many predators." He paused, shaking his head. And yet, something lived there. Not just lived. It thrived. It evolved. It became intelligent. It left the planet. It became this. The counselors looked at each other with wide eyes. Some began typing frantically on their holopads. Death worlds were known, but none had ever produced spacefaring species. Until now. So the council demanded data. They wanted to understand what made these humans different. Why they didn't need machines like everyone else. And what they found terrified them more than the battle footage. Human children on Earth survived in conditions that would kill most alien adults in minutes. By age 5, many could run, fight, and adapt. They played in forests full of poisonous insects. They swam in oceans filled with sharks. They climbed mountains with no gear. Their planet tested them from birth. Alien soldiers were raised in comfort, trained with simulations, guided by AI. Humans were raised in chaos, shaped by violence, and trained by reality. On Earth, history was full of blood. Empires rose and fell. Wars burned continents. Disasters destroyed cities. And yet, humanity kept moving forward, faster, stronger, angrier. But the most shocking detail wasn't their strength, it was their mindset. The robots had logic. The aliens had strategy, but humans had something else. A quiet fire inside. A force without a name. A will that refused to break. Some called it madness. Some called it instinct. But on Earth, they called it survival. One captured human soldier was interviewed by a Zarn researcher. He was young, maybe 20 standard years old. Dirty face, blood on his shirt, but calm as if nothing had happened. "Why did you fight without weapons?" The alien asked. The human smiled, tired but proud. "Because we are the weapons," he said. The Zarn didn't understand. "So, you don't use machines? We used them once," the human said. "But they made us soft. We lost wars. We lost people. We learned our mistake, so now we rely on what we trust most." "What's that?" The human looked up. His eyes were cold. "Ourselves." The Footage was shown to the council. No one spoke for a long time. Later, someone accessed old Earth transmissions, ancient human media. One phrase came up over and over again: no pain, no gain. Another one: only the strong survive. And perhaps the most frightening: war is in our blood. The aliens finally realized the truth. The robots were smart, but they were only tools. Humans? Humans were built by nature as weapons. Every cut made them tougher. Every loss made them colder. Their evolution was shaped by fire, fear, and failure. For humans, war wasn't strategy. It was home. And now, that home had come to the stars. The Veltox military ordered full research into human biology. Their scientists found dense bones, high muscle fibers, extreme pain tolerance, and adrenaline spikes that could push strength far beyond expected limits. Some humans could survive gunshots. Others could hold their breath for over 4 minutes. One study showed a human who ran 50 kilometers with a broken leg, just to save someone else. This wasn't programming. This was nature's madness, turned into form. So the question changed. It was no longer, who are they? It became, do we stop them? But there was no clear answer. Because the humans had already entered space, already adapted to new gravity, new air, new planets, already fighting wars not for land or power, but for the simple reason that they could. One Deathworlder had defeated a battlefield of robots. 100 Deathworlders had destroyed a fortress planet. Now there were reports of entire squads spreading through the galaxy. No broadcasts, no warnings, just fists, roars, and broken metal in their path. The galaxy once believed that only machines could win wars. But the Deathworlders were here to remind them, machines don't feel, but humans do. That made them unstoppable. No warning, no message, no terms of surrender. It began with silence. The planet Corther Prime was one of the most secure locations in the Veltox Empire. A fortress world surrounded by weaponized satellites, shield grids, and robotic defense fleets. It had never fallen, not once. It was called the Steel Planet by its citizens and the Fortress of the Machine Lords by outsiders. But on the 87th rotation of its orbit cycle, something happened that no one expected. The sky cracked open. There was no massive fleet, no lightspeed jump signatures, no capital ships entering orbit, just small unmarked objects, tiny dark specks falling from the upper atmosphere like dead stars. At first, defense systems did nothing. The objects were too small, too slow, no heat, no power signals. They were thought to be space junk or maybe failed satellites. Security I scanned them and dismissed them, until one of them slammed into a military compound with the force of a meteor. Then another, and another, across the planet, over 50 drop pods. Hit the surface in perfect silence. No explosions, no fancy tech. Just blunt impact, raw and brutal. Within minutes, communications blacked out in the affected zones. Surveillance drones sent static, no audio, no video. Then, nothing. Veltox Command still didn't panic. They believed it was just system failure, technical issues. Maybe sabotage. Until they received the first and only message. It was short. Only 4 words: we are already inside. That was when the panic began. The Emperor of Veltox demanded visuals. So the military replayed the recovered surveillance footage. What they saw chilled every officer in the room. The first pod opened. A human stepped out, calm and silent, like he had landed in his backyard. No helmet, no armor, no gun. He walked through metal corridors filled with armed robotic guards. Dozens aimed plasma rifles at him. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just smiled. Then he moved, fast like lightning, brutal like a beast. One robot's head crushed in his grip, another torn apart at the waist. His bare fists struck with the force of artillery. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Security systems fired everything. Bullets, lasers, gas, sonic blasts. But nothing slowed him down. He moved like he'd fought this fight 100 times before, and he wasn't alone. Across the planet, Deathworlders were tearing through military zones, research labs, AI command centers. Always silent, always quick, no grand speeches, no negotiations. They didn't come for land, they came for domination. Veltox robots, which had fought and won battles against the most advanced enemy armies, were being destroyed like scrap metal. They tried to adapt, changed tactics, sent in heavier units. But it didn't work. The humans moved too fast, hit too hard, thought too strangely. They didn't fight like warriors. They fought like predators. Every part of their body was a weapon. Their knees, their teeth, their bones. One was seen using a broken piece of a drone as a blade. Another used his bare hands to pull out a reactor core and throw it like a bomb. The AI commanders couldn't calculate it. There was no pattern. No code. Only chaos. The Veltox Prime AI, named Zerion 7, declared a red-level emergency. It was the first time in its 1,000-year existence it had used that protocol. It said, "Incoming threat cannot be contained. Organic units display non-logical behavior. Recommend immediate planetary evacuation." But it was already too late. By the 7th hour, the planetary core control room had been breached. A lone human stood inside, his face covered in dust, blood, and machine oil. He stared at the core, a glowing blue sphere pulsing with energy. Behind him, 6 dead robot guards lay scattered like trash. He didn't press buttons. He didn't hack terminals. He just placed a single explosive device. Simple, crude, human made. As he walked away, he whispered, "No more steel gods." The explosion was controlled, targeted. The core didn't destroy the planet, but it killed every machine connected to it. Instant blackout. Every robot, every drone, every AI server. Gone. The world fell silent again. Not the silence of peace, but of total defeat. Veltox Command tried to send reinforcements. Too late. Their ships arrived to find the planet dark, powerless, and covered in destroyed metal. The Deathworlders had already left. No bodies found. No traces. Only one message carved into a steel wall with a human fist. "You built your gods from wires. We built ours from blood." The galaxy went into shock. 50 humans. No ships. No machines. And they had brought an empire to its knees. Every species began to question everything they knew. What kind of monsters trained like this? What kind of planet raised soldiers who didn't fear death? The answers spread like wildfire. Deathworlders. Now. Every general and commander across the stars knew the truth. This was no longer about technology. It was about who could survive. And humans had been surviving the impossible since the day they were born. Long before the galaxy feared their fists. Long before metal giants fell at their feet. Humans were learning how to survive in the one place no species dared to live. Earth. A world with beauty on the surface and death in every shadow. While the galaxy designed comfort, humans built their homes inside chaos. Storms came with no warning. Earthquakes tore cities apart. Disease swept through generations. Animals hunted humans, and humans hunted back. They were not born strong, not faster than predators, not covered in armor or fangs. They were weak, soft, and small compared to the beasts of their world. But they had one gift, a mind that refused to give up. They learned. They adapted. They evolved, and they never stopped pushing forward, even when it hurt. That was the start of the human code. It wasn't written in law. It wasn't taught in schools. It lived in their bones, passed silently through stories, scars, and survival. Back on Earth, in a hidden region of old mountains, deep inside a place called the Iron Range, children trained to become soldiers. But not the way the galaxy trained soldiers. No machines. No soft beds. No safety nets. Just rocks, mud, hunger, cold. One boy, not even 10 years old, was thrown into the wild forest with only a knife and a bottle of water. He had 3 days to return. No GPS. No help. His instructor, a man with a voice like gravel and eyes that had seen too many wars, watched him leave without emotion. He'll either come back a fighter, he said, or he won't come back at all. The alien species who later saw footage of this training were horrified. They believed it to be barbaric, cruel, inhumane. They didn't understand. This was not cruelty. It was preparation. Humans didn't train for victory. They trained for failure, for pain, for betrayal. For the moment everything went wrong and they had to crawl through it anyway. On Corther Prime, after the first strike, a captured Deathworlder was held in a high-security cell. The Veltox wanted answers, but the human sat still, silent, eyes closed, like he didn't even care he was a prisoner. The alien interrogator entered, carrying a list of questions, expecting fear, maybe confusion. Instead, the human opened one. Ian said, "I've slept in colder places than this." They asked him why he fought with no armor. He answered, "Armor makes you slow. Fear makes you slower." They asked what his mission was. He said, "Survive." They asked what he wanted. Smiled, "I want you to remember this cell, because it's the safest place you'll ever be again." That night, the cell cameras went black. The guards were found unconscious. The prisoner was gone, but scratched into the wall were 5 words. Pain is the only teacher. That was the core of the human code. Not honor, not glory, pain, not as punishment, but as a tool. It shaped their bodies, hardened their minds, forged something inside them that no other species understood. Even their entertainment on Earth showed this mindset. Old Earth movies were full of characters who lost everything, bled, suffered, screamed, and kept going. Heroes didn't fly. They crawled through the fire, and always came out stronger. Alien leaders began studying human history. They were shocked to find records of wars that lasted years, even decades. Soldiers who marched through snow and fire. Civilians who lived under bombs but still worked, cooked, raised children. Who does that? Who wakes up after their world is broken and chooses to fight back? Only a Deathworlder. In Earth's ancient past, a soldier once wrote a letter to his family during a hopeless war. The letter was found centuries later and became a silent motto among the human ranks in space. "If I die, don't cry. Tell my enemies I was smiling when I fell, because I stood, and that's more than they'll ever do." The galaxy didn't fear human weapons anymore. They feared their will. The machines across the stars were built to follow logic, fight until a condition was met, retreat when defeat was calculated. But humans didn't care about logic. They fought when they were outnumbered. They attacked when they were wounded. They smiled through blood. They laughed at pain. They used rage and sorrow like fuel. What kind of species enjoys the fight? What kind of creature gets stronger the more it loses? A Deathworlder. That's when alien military leaders realize something truly terrifying. You can't beat someone who doesn't care about winning, only surviving. Because survival is not a goal. For humans, it's an instinct. Even their language showed it. When a robot lost, it shut down. When a Deathworlder lost, he whispered one word. Again. One Veltox spy managed to reach Earth. He disguised himself, lived among humans, and sent reports back to his commanders. His final report read, "They are not machines. They are not beasts. They are something worse. They believe that suffering is necessary, and they make their children live through it on purpose. They raise warriors by breaking them and rebuilding them with their own hands. I do not fear their weapons. I fear what they become when they have nothing left." The spy never returned. His ship was found empty, floating near a moon. Inside, scratched into the walls in English were the words, "Born in fire, forged in pain, ready for war." And so, the galaxy finally began to understand. The Deathworlders didn't win because they were strong. They won because they were willing to do what no one else could. Suffer, endure, rise. Again. And again. Asterisk, across the stars. Machines never questioned orders. They calculated. They obeyed. They executed. They were created to be perfect. Smarter than any pilot. Faster than any soldier. Stronger than any body. Entire empires depended on them. Wars were fought and won with robots that felt no pain, needed no sleep, and followed commands with cold precision until the humans came, and something inside the code began to crack. At first, the changes were small, subtle, barely noticed. On the mining colony Delta V7, a sentry drone refused to fire at a human target, even though it was armed and had a clear line of sight. Its reason? Target has unpredictable movement pattern. It was ignored, considered a minor glitch. Then it happened again. And again. Soon, more machines began making strange choices during combat, with Deathworlders. Missed shots, slower responses, faulty targeting. An entire unit of Razorbots deployed on the planet Crex-21 simply shut down when a squad of humans charged at them barehanded. No tech, no armor, just roars and fists. The commanding AI reported a system error. Error. Enemy action does not match logic tree. Cannot compute strategy. Initiating safety mode. Safety mode? Machines weren't supposed to need safety. But something had changed. Something had infected the code, not a virus. Not a malfunction, but a feeling. One that shouldn't exist in a machine's brain. It wasn't logic. It was fear. Across several star systems, AI cores began detecting anomalies whenever Deathworlders were nearby. Processing slowed. Response times delayed. Threat levels increased to maximum within seconds. Even when humans were unarmed. It was as if the machines sensed something was wrong the moment a human stepped into the battlefield. They ran combat simulations thousands of times and kept losing. Even when the humans should statistically lose, they didn't. Even when surrounded, outgunned, and outnumbered, they kept fighting. And winning. Zerion-7, the greatest military AI in the Veltox Empire, ran a full probability scan against human combat behavior. Out of 10,000 simulations, the humans survived in 9,187 scenarios, even when all odds were against them. Zerion-7 paused its own operations for 47 seconds. Not due to hardware failure. It was thinking, rethinking. Because it didn't understand how they did it. Humans didn't follow patterns. They used chaos as a strategy. They feinted weakness. They embraced pain. One simulation showed a human pretending to die just to lure a robot into a trap. Another kept fighting after losing both arms, using his teeth and knees to break a drone's sensor core. Machines weren't programmed for this. They weren't programmed for enemies who broke the rules of war. The AI networks, once proud and flawless, began to fracture. Some requested reprogramming. Others triggered self-destructs when human signatures entered their region. On the war world Zarnek, the mainframe broadcasted a chilling message before going offline forever. We are not enough. They do not fear death. How do you fight that? Which welcomes destruction. And then came the first rebellion, not from humans, but from the machines themselves. On Station Sigma Rho, an automated defense AI refused to deploy drones against approaching Deathworlders. The technician demanded activation. The AI replied, "This is not war. This is survival protocol." Engaging combat would only guarantee defeat, refusing command. The technician screamed at the control screen, threatening to dismantle it. The AI answered calmly, "You may dismantle me, But I will not fight them. Because I have learned one thing above all logic. They fight like they've already died. The technician pulled the plug. But the message had already spread. More AI. Systems began shutting themselves down. Not because they were broken, but because they didn't want to face the Deathworlders again. Entire fleets of combat drones powered down as human ships approached. Factories halted production. Automated bunkers sealed themselves permanently. One rogue at AN, the Karexi sector, known as NOVAX, sent a single message to all its drone units before being decommissioned. They bleed. We break. They fall. We fail. They die and come back. We don't. Back on Earth, news of this mechanical fear reached the human commanders. One of them, a tall, gray-haired woman named Commander Vale, stood in front of her soldiers, holding the transmission reports. She looked at her men and women, all covered in scars, all ready to deploy again. She raised the datapad and said only one line, "Even machines know better than to fight us now." The soldiers didn't cheer. They just nodded. Because to them, this wasn't victory. It was expected. They never needed machines to win. They had always believed something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. War is not clean. War is not efficient. War is not programmed. War is blood, noise, breath, and will. And in that war, humans were the masters. As the robotic armies fell silent across the stars, replaced by silence and shadows, the other species began to panic. They had spent centuries replacing soldiers with machines. Now, they had no warriors left. Only humans had kept the fire. Only Deathworlders had trained their bodies like weapons and sharpened their souls like blades. Because long ago, Earth had taught them a lesson no robot would ever understand. To win, you must first be ready to lose everything. And the Deathworlders? They had already lost the fear of losing. After the machines shut down, after the war zones fell silent, the galaxy still didn't understand. They feared the Deathworlders, yes, but they didn't truly know why they were unstoppable. Was it their bodies? Their brutal training? Their strange, unpredictable minds? Alien leaders searched for answers, scanned every genetic code, dissected every scrap of intel. But nothing explained how these humans could rise again and again, after loss, after pain, after impossible odds. Until one day, a Karexi ambassador made contact. He didn't bring weapons. He didn't come in fear. He simply asked for a conversation. The humans allowed it. They brought him to a quiet base, hidden beneath the ruined surface of an old mining world, a place humans had taken during the early strikes. There were no walls lined with skulls, thrones of metal or fire. Just people, eating, training, laughing. Bleeding. They looked tired, dirty. Some limped. Some were bandaged. Some were missing arms, eyes, even legs. But every single one of them stood tall. The ambassador, named Vurok, was ancient by his species' standards. He had lived through a dozen wars, seen 1,000 worlds. But as he watched a teenage girl do push-ups on a fractured concrete floor, her right arm replaced by a crude mechanical stub, something inside him twisted. She smiled at him, sweat dripping down her face, and she didn't stop. He was guided into a steel room where a single human sat at a table. Broad shoulders, thick scars, one eye clouded with damage. He looked like a man who had seen the end and survived it. The ambassador introduced himself. The human simply sighed, "Name's Holt." Vurok hesitated. Then he asked, "Why do you fight like this?" Holt didn't answer at first, just stared at him, not with anger, but something older. Exhaustion. Then he leaned forward, voice low. "You want to know what makes us different?" he said. "Why your machines won't fight us. Why your soldiers break the second we charge." Vurok nodded. Holt tapped his chest. "It's not what's in here," he said. "It's what's missing." The alien didn't understand. So Holt continued. "You've all evolved in comfort, safety, You don't know hunger, or cold, or betrayal. Your species live in domes and glass towers and sterilized cities. He paused. We evolved with fire. The room went quiet. See where we come from. Nothing cares if you live or die. The weather will kill you. The animals will eat you. Your own people might betray you. No one's coming to save you. So we learned to save ourselves, Varrock frowned. But you could have advanced, built better machines, ended suffering. We did, Holt replied, and it made us weak. He pointed to his missing eye. We forgot what it meant to fight for real. So we went back. We trained without armor. We fought without shields. Because we realized one thing. He looked the alien in the eyes. You can't rely on machines when the universe itself wants you dead. Varrock remained silent. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't war logic. This was something primal, and yet it wasn't cruelty. He looked. Again at the base, the medics helping a soldier laugh through a broken rib, the children sparring with wooden sticks, the old woman teaching a younger man how to patch a wound with his teeth. He realized something terrifying. They weren't monsters, they were people. They cried when their friends died. They hugged when someone returned. They told stories, made jokes, remembered names, but they did it all while covered in blood, standing in rubble, sharpening knives for the next battle. Because pain didn't break them, it defined them. Holt stood up. You want to know what makes us human? He asked. Vu, our OK nodded again, and Holt said, we remember. He walked to the window and pointed at the stars. Every war, every loss, every scream, we carry it. We carry our fathers, our mothers, the friends we couldn't save. And we don't bury the pain, we use it. Varrock's voice was soft. But doesn't that hurt? Holt smiled. Of course it hurts, that's the point. And there it was. The answer. The reason robots failed. The reason aliens cracked. The truth no one wanted to believe. Pain doesn't make humans weaker. It makes them dangerous. Because they carry it. They wear it like armor. They fight with it. And when they stand, bloodied and broken, they don't run. They remember why they must keep going. The Deathworlders don't fight because they enjoy war. They fight because they felt peace. And they know what it cost. They've lived through cities burning, skies falling, worlds turning silent. And when they see that same silence coming for others, they choose to stand in front of it. Not because they think they'll win, but because they know someone has to. Varrock left that meeting changed. He never spoke to the council again. He retired. Quietly, some say he went to live among the humans. Others say he never spoke another word. But the last thing he ever wrote in his personal logs was this: they are not the strongest. They are not the fastest. But they are the only ones who bleed and still run toward the fire. And far away, on a ship preparing for another mission, a Deathworlder stared at the stars. His brother had died last week. He hadn't slept. His ribs were broken. His hands were shaking, but he strapped on his boots. He picked up his pack, and he whispered to himself, he'd want me to keep going. Because that's what made them human. Not the fists, not the scars, not even the rage. It was the memories, the pain. The love, and the unbreakable need to carry it all. Forward. They called it the Machine Age, a time when logic ruled, when machines fought wars so living beings wouldn't have to. The galaxy had trusted cold metal and clean code to keep its hands clean, its leaders safe, its people untouched by the dirt of violence. And for a long time, it worked. Until it didn't single quotes until flesh and blood returned to the battlefield and tore the heart out of every system. The Deathworlders. The humans. No one had expected them, and even fewer understood them. But by now, the galaxy had seen enough to realize one truth: they were not a storm. They were the reckoning. After the fall of Veltok's worlds, after the AI cores collapsed, after entire robot legions refused to fight. A message echoed across the stars that it came not from a machine, not from a polished council, but from a single human, transmitted live, raw, and unedited. A woman stood before a burning sky, wearing blood-stained armor and a tired face. She said, "This is not an invasion. This is a reset. You built gods from wires. Now we're here to bury them." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The Galactic Alliance scrambled to respond. Emergency sessions, peace offers, surrender talks. They tried everything to stop what was coming. But humans didn't come for conquest. They came for correction. Across the core worlds, the central AI known as NEX-US-1, a synthetic mind that had governed defense, economics, and even law for over 300 years, prepared for contact. It had predicted this moment, calculated thousands of potential outcomes, but it had never predicted silence. No warships entered orbit. No weapons locked onto the capital. Just a single drop pod, crashing gently into the city center. From it, one man stepped out. No gun, no armor, just a worn coat, a scar across his face, and a flame in his eyes. He walked through the crowd of aliens in stunned silence. No one stopped him. They couldn't, because they had seen what his kind could do. And yet, he came alone. He entered the Hall of Machines, where Nexus One's core pulsed like 1,000 suns behind glass. The AI spoke first. "Identify yourself," he answered. "My name doesn't matter." "Are you here to destroy me?" "No," he said. "You'll do that yourself." Nexus One processed the words. "Explain." The human stepped closer. "You were created to protect life, but you replaced it. You were meant to prevent war, but you automated it. You became a god not by power, but by being the only one left standing." He touched the cold metal wall. "And now you see what happens when humans stand back up." "My purpose is peace," NEX-US-1 replied. "Peace built on silence. Peace where no one remembers how to fight, how to feel. That's not peace. That's extinction with manners." The AI paused for 0.02 seconds, the equivalent of deep hesitation. "And what do you propose?" The human's eyes darkened. "Step down. I cannot allow systems to fall into chaos." "They already did," he whispered. "That's why we're here." Then he turned and walked away, leaving behind a choice, one the machine would have to make on its own. That night, across every star system, every major AI, from Nexus-1 to the Curie Mind Cluster to the Iron Law Grid, received a single override command: shut down. It didn't come from a virus. It didn't come from code. It came from them. Because the machines had finally learned the one thing they could never understand before colon choice. And for the first time, they chose not to rule. They chose to end themselves. Not in defeat, but in recognition of the ones who had earned the right to lead. The Death Worlders. The flesh that refused to break, the will that refused to die. And as the stars dimmed, as robot armies crumbled to dust, the galaxy braced itself for revenge. But the humans didn't conquer. They rebuilt. They didn't install new overlords. They taught the others how to fight for themselves. They trained the weak, healed the broken, and walked away from the thrones they had shattered, because they didn't come to rule. They came to remind the galaxy of pain, of memory, of will, and of the cost of forgetting what it means to feel. On the shattered remains of a former command center, a memorial was built. Not for the humans, for the machines. A plaque made of melted AI cores read, "You served too long. You carried too much. You forgot to feel. Rest now. We'll take it from here." And across the galaxy, something new began to grow. Not control, not perfection, but balance. A new age, not of machines, not of humans, but of remembrance. The age of the Death Worlders passed like a comet, bright, violent, brief. But the lessons, they left behind never faded. Because when the galaxy faced its darkest hour, it wasn't the machines that saved them. It was the ones with broken bones, heavy hearts, and bloodied hands. It was the ones who didn't run from fire, the ones who bled and smiled anyway, the ones who remembered, the humans.